So let's take a closer look at this entire process of communication, from reality to experience to telling your story to your audience, listening to what you have to say, right? Let's look at this chain of events from direct experience to the recipient of the story. Now, this next slide is pretty wordy, but bear with me. And the one after this one is really going to break it down in quite a meaningful way, I think. So consider a CD player for a moment. Let's just imagine you have a CD player in your bedroom. Now, technically, a CD consists of a continuous spiral of micro indentations and flat areas, which represent the music, which must be read by a laser and then interpreted and then translated by the stereo, right? Objectively, these markings on a CD, if you look at if you have like a magnifying glass, or not even that, you'd probably need a microscope because they're microscopic. If you have a microscope and you look objectively, these are just indentations on a piece of plastic. It's not music, right? It's turned into music, right? It's kind of the way that you would think about your experience, and then you would think about how you're going to tell someone about your experience. It's kind of the same thing. You're doing this transfer of information. You're doing this phase change, right? This transformational process is happening. So this music is, well, let's say, okay, first you put the CD in and you have this laser interpreting and translating. Next, this is translated into an electronic signal, which is carried from the receiver and the amplifier of the stereo. It's carried into the speaker. And the speaker then has to phase change again and convert this electronic signal to an analog sound vibration, something that moves on this diaphragm, right? In order for it to be heard by the human ear, because our reality occurs in analog, right? Unless you think we live in a simulation. But that's another story entirely. So in human sense, perception, and thought, the process is somewhat similar. Okay, it's similar to this putting in a CD that has just a bunch of little micro indentations, and it gets transferred into something eventually that's perceived as music. It's the same. It's a similar process for humans. Direct experience of reality and sense experience are somehow transformed into perception and interpretation by the mind and body. So it's almost as if this experience comes into your body, comes into your mind. Sound waves come into your ears, light waves come into your eyes. All of these things come into your sense organs. Things come into your skin, right? And then it's transformed and turned into something. It's called experience. And then you tell someone about your experience, right? It's a very strange process if you think about it. So now imagine you're walking into a room that you've never been in before, and you find that a music CD is playing, okay? The specific type of vibrations through the diaphragm, which move through the air and into your ears, are what you experience. And then you interpret as music, right? So first you're experiencing some kind of sound vibration, and then it takes your mind a split second to interpret that. Oh, this is music. Oh, this is jazz. Oh, this is blues. Oh, this is hip hop, whatever it is. Oh, I like this. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, this is too loud. This is, this is good music. I don't like this music, whatever. So what you have done in your mind merely by walking into the room with the music already playing is that it brings you into a state of third-hand experience already. Since you will experience or listen to, interpret the music, and respond and think accordingly, depending if you like the music or not. Was the volume likable to you, etc. What was the quality of the sound, right? This description I just gave doesn't really account for how we typically interpret the world. right? Our perception of reality is typically top down, which means we typically experience the world in the way our mind expects it to be based on the conditioning of previous experience, right? Versus the other way of interpreting is from the ground up, is by treating every moment and experience as if it were completely new. That isn't to say that you forget what music is and you just experience it all over again, right? But you hear it in a different way every single time. Even the same song, you can hear the same song differently. If you really tune in, you can hear different things about it. That's especially true if you listen to your favorite song or favorite album on a different set of headphones, maybe on an upgraded set of headphones or an upgraded set of speakers. You hear something totally different. I didn't notice that. I didn't notice that sound before, whatever it is. Such a habit of bringing the old to the new, right, which is the first, that's the first method, expecting things to be a certain way. If you're bringing the old to the new, this is largely a function of language, and it's very hard to escape. The other way, from the ground up, this ground up interpretation is prelingual, right? This limitation sometimes bringing the old to the new, putting words in front of experience, labeling everything as a word, right? Putting word, oh, that's pretty, that's red, that's nice, I don't like this, I like that, all these constant value judgments where you put label on everything. You're putting the word between you and the direct experience. Good luck with that, right? You're not going to go very far as your awareness, right? But if you let go of that, if you realize, oh, that's what I'm doing, that awareness is all you need. And then you can start to cultivate a different way, right? This limitation of bringing the old to the new, putting these words between us and direct experience, serves to protect us from danger. So it is important because we want to go, that might be dangerous. Oh, I better watch out for that. But in our modern world, there's really, unless you're in the jungle and you're looking out for, I better watch for this, that, if you're not in that, if you're not living that way, then it often serves to dull our senses, right? Instead, walk into the room, be completely open, try to just experience instead of, I like this music, I don't like this music, it's too loud, too scratchy, quality's not very good, right? Just be open to the experience, and then your senses will open up. And when your senses open up, you're going to perceive a lot more than you ever could. So here, this slide here, I want to demonstrate the sixth hand experience. So you think when you tell someone a story, or if you hear someone else's story, they're telling you second hand or third hand, right? That's actually sixth hand experience, really, if you think about it. So let's say you want to tell someone else about an experience you just had. By the time you've performed it, perform meaning through likeness. So you're actually trying to recreate it through likeness. And it is interpreted by your audience. So your audience receives the story and interprets it. It is no less than sixth hand information. If you look at every little transformational step, which we're about to review here, you'll see why this is the case. Every step in the process is merely your best attempt to recreate the actual experience, right? Because if you want to tell a story the best way you can, you try to recreate the actual experience. If you're making a movie, the director wants to create the most true to form, true to life experience, right? Same way with an author who's writing a book. Same way if you're just telling a story. But the reverse is true, right? You want to understand things as deeply as you can, right? So to understand the steps the steps of telling the story, you should also think of, okay, how am I receiving the story? How is this coming in, right? Because your perception is heightened whether you're retelling a story or you're being open and listening, right? It's a two-way street. Every step in the process is merely your best attempt to recreate this actual experience, right? So your audience recreates your story in their own minds using their own experiential reference points. Some of those points may be similar, but some may be completely different, right? The more integrated a culture, the less divergent the story becomes, right? So in a high context culture, right? A culture, a tribal culture, for example, a Native American culture, the stories are going to be less divergent. The understandings are going to be more uniform. The storyteller is going to be more connected with the audience more connected with the storyteller, right? So here we go as far as the steps, the actual steps of communication, how you perceive reality and how you think about it, interpret it, and tell someone else about your story. First-hand experience is the direct experience, right? It's the unfiltered rawness of reality. It just is. It exists in the wordless state, the thoughtless state. It just, whatever it is, it is. There's nothing to think about here. It is just unfiltered reality. The second, and so you would say that that's that room somewhere that you've never been in. The music's playing in that room right now, and it's just happening without you being there, right? Secondhand is sense experience. This is the act of experiencing. This is just the base level filtering. So think of the first-hand experience is just the music playing in the room objectively. You're not there. Second-hand experience is you're there. Boom. You're instantly there. The very first thing that has to happen is your sense organs have to kick in. You have to see what's going on. You have to hear, you have to feel, you have to smell. All these things are happening. You have to, experience it, at least for a split second, this is happening before you go, okay, I'm in a room, there's music playing, right? Especially if you're magically transformed from, if aliens teleported you and they popped you in another room, just to mess with you for a laugh. So that sense perception is just this active experiencing. You're there. You're the experiencer, right? And you're always doing this, right? The first two are always happening constantly, even when you're asleep. Third-hand interpretation is how the experience is received. This is known as a percept, right? Where we get the word perception. How do you perceive this? How is it received? Right? There's a lot of different ways this experience could be received for you, depending on the state of your senses. Well, what if you just woke up, right? And you're kind of groggy and you're like, you're not tuned in. You're not really as open to certain things and activities. You don't want to hear loud music when you first wake up. Maybe some people do, but most, people probably don't. How is that experience received? Not how you interpret it necessarily, right? But it is part of that. But how is it received through the senses? And then what kind of perception, right? So those two are happening, but one is happening first, how it's coming into you, and then how you're interpreting it, right? This is the interpretation. This is called the percept. The fourth hand is remembering. This is the reassembly of your experience. So this is post facto. You're no longer experiencing this experience you want to tell someone about, but now you're reassembling it. You're remembering. The word remember, by the way, think of the way I learned it was take the word dismember, right? Dismember is to chop things up, right? So to remember is to take those pieces and bring them back together. So you're taking, oh, I remember this part about the experience and this part and this part and this part. That's how you tell an experience. That's how you relay an experience, is you tell about this part and this part. Well, what was it like? What did you see? What did you hear? You're taking all these different parts. You're remembering, putting back together. So that's the fourth hand. And that's known as a phantasm, by the way. A phantasm is the imagining of something in its absence. So you're not having the experience anymore, but you're remembering a certain experience. That's a phantasm. The fifth hand is the telling. This is the conveying your experience to other people. Okay? This is known as a concept. So, of course, in order to tell about your experience, you have to remember. You have to first put the pieces back together in your mind. And by the way, every one of these steps is a transformational change happening, right? The first-hand experience is the reality, the rawness of reality in that moment has changed, right? This act of experiencing is not the same as the raw reality, right? So every single time you go from one step to another, from remembering to telling, there's a transformational shift happening, right? And so this is basically this should teach you that no moment is ever quite the same, and nor are you the same person at any given moment, right? You're a different person. I'm a different person now than I was 5 minutes ago, right? 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. I'm a different person. Sixth hand experience is, of course, the receiver of the conveying. The process begins again. So if the fifth hand is you're telling your experience to others, you're explaining a concept. The sixth hand is your audience receiving what you're saying, right? And then it starts again because they are reimagining the direct experience. They're reimagining, if it's a really good story anyway, they're reimagining the sense perception, what it would feel like, interpreting and so forth. So this happens again, right? So those are the 6 steps of human communication. And just to simply be aware of those, not to remember them, not to be able to recite facts or recite to remember all of these little steps isn't the point. The point is just to understand. The main takeaway is to understand that every single step here, there's a transformation happening, right? Something is transformed into something else slightly, and then it moves on, right? That is the very nature of our reality. Now let's talk a little bit about words and how the reverse can be true, how the word, putting a label or a word, having a word for something, can change how you perceive something or what you perceive at all, right? So women from the Himba tribe of Namibia were given a test to see if they could perceive the color blue, right? I'm sure all of us can see the blue square here, right? These women of this tribe have no word for the color blue in their language. And it took them a long time to begin noticing the blue square in this image. They flat did not see this image for quite a while until it was pointed out to them. This may seem strange to us, but apparently the color blue did not exist for the Indo-European languages until the Egyptians introduced it to the rest of the world, right? The Egyptians were the only ones with a blue dye at that time, so they needed a word to describe it. And once they had the word, then it was appearing in a lot more places for people, right? It's a very interesting, there's a lot more to be said about this, but that kind of goes into another direction. So, but the question here is, how many things around us that we don't have words for do we fail to see? Right? I think about this a lot, and there are so many. I think of, there's just so many different things that you can notice that if you don't put a word to it, then you realize, oh, there's no word for this. Right? There might be a word for something that you notice in another culture, probably an older culture that had more time to think about these things, right? But even in those older cultures, there's probably a lot of things that they don't have words for. However, let's talk about the Namibian tribe again. They have a dozen different words for the color green. So they see many different shades of green, and they can distinguish between these quite easily. Can you? One of these squares is a totally different shade of green than the rest of these. I wasn't able to pick this out until I'll show you in the next slide here, but I couldn't pick this out. They all look the same to me. So take a moment, see if you can find out which of these squares is actually, and don't cheat now. see if you can figure out which of these, and they look identical. And I thought you know what? I won't tell you which one I thought was the different shade, but I was totally wrong. I'll just say that. The Eskimo have 50 different words for snow, which doing when researching for this part of the series, I realized these 50 different words for snow is really just evidence of how closely they've tuned into their environment. Right? It's not that the Eskimo have 50 different words for the same thing, but they have a word for each different type of snow. There's many different types of snow, right? If you're a skier or snowboarder, you can probably recognize, I don't know, probably half a dozen, maybe up to a dozen different types of snow, right? There's slushy snow, there's powder, there's icy snow, there's crunchy snow, there's different qualities of snow. So having this ability to really tune in to your world, to tune into your surroundings, is really one of the fundamental principles of understanding word magic and being more perceptive in your everyday life, being perceptive within yourself and also with the world at large, right? Okay, so here's the big reveal. Here is so register your choice now, and here's the next slide. Let's look at which panel is actually a different shade of green. It's going to be this one right here in the upper, almost in the upper left here. You can see the color values on each of these squares is the same except this one here. So while exact colors can perceive on an electronic screen, or the colors we can perceive are going to be different, right? They're going to be somewhat different. The different shade of green is indicated in the RGB value. So you can look this up for yourself, and here is the link to this study. Pretty interesting. Yeah. So the one that I picked, that I was convinced was the right one, was actually catty corner from the different square. It was this one right here. I was convinced this one. I was like, it's got to be this one this is totally different. So that was my answer. And that concludes part 6, the traditions of storytelling. I did want to talk about one thing, because in the beginning of this presentation, I did have a chance to talk about what the word culture means, but I just wanted to save it till the end here. So, because culture is it's an interesting word. I'm looking at online etymology, etymonline.com right now. And it's one word etymology comes from the mid-15th century of Europe. It means the tilling of land, the act of preparing the earth for crops. From the Latin cultura, cultivating agriculture. Now that is kind of the, to cultivate in the figurative sense means in a civilization is to cultivate through education, cultivate through a systematic improvement and refinement of the mind, right? So really, we have the word culture, we use the word culture in the sense that we're cultivating, we're growing our understanding through education. We are enhancing or we should be growing our minds or growing our understanding of the world. And so our worldview is always growing, changing, evolving, right? It grows to a point, but it cannot grow beyond the forms of the original seed, right? And in our Western culture, the original seed of our culture, the original, the genesis of our understanding of the world comes from the ancient Greeks, especially the philosophies of Plato and Aristotle, right? Plato being the metaphysician, the metaphysical philosopher, and Aristotle being the natural philosopher, or what we would come to know today as the physical sciences, the outside world, the objective world versus Plato's world of the subjective, metaphysical inner world, right? Those are the seeds. Those two understandings of the world in the most fundamental origins of our culture those are the seeds of our culture. And so as a result, whatever the type of seed is that you plant in a civilization becomes the culture, right? You can't essentially grow beyond that, or can you? Right? I feel like you can. Cultural influences shift somewhat, but one thing is for sure: the cultural influences of the indigenous people of this continent, I think they're largely romanticized, but maybe not. Their worldview really isn't taken into account in a serious way, right? Because, of course, the seeds of their culture go back to a much different time, a different worldview. So it's an interesting word, culture, and we also get, I suppose we get the word cult from it, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So maybe someone knows a little bit more about that than I've looked into. The other thing worth mentioning, and this is a beautiful slide. The other thing worth mentioning when it comes to a culture, is that there is a shift happening in the Western culture where there is a dissatisfaction with the foundational understanding or the foundational worldview that comes out of our culture, right? So a lot of people, including myself, for sure, and a lot of people are looking eastward for a different perspective, for a fresh outlook. And it makes sense because the fundamental driving force of our world is transformation, right? So we're looking to transform, we're looking to grow. Otherwise, there's this, otherwise we're stagnant, and that doesn't feel good to the seeker, right? If you consider yourself a seeker or a mystic or just a student of life or a student of the occult, and you're wanting to grow your perspective, it doesn't feel good to just hang around in the Western esoteric or Western occult circles and go round and round there, right? Because you want a new perspective. You want to grow your worldview. And so what's been happening is a lot of Eastern worldviews, Eastern practices, Eastern medicine, yoga, Reiki, a lot of different acupuncture, those are just a few things. But a lot of the Eastern worldviews are moving west. And subsequently, the Western worldviews are moving east. And it's interesting to see that happening, but this transformational process is never ending. So it's really not a surprise, right? There's that old occult adage, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's very much true when it comes to everything that I've thought deeply about or tried to, I've tried to disprove that statement many times and was unsuccessful. So these worldviews, these perspectives, we have a primarily physical, dualistic worldview in the West, whereas in the East it's more of a non-dual worldview. And we have this blending because our world's changed a lot, and there's a lot of influences coming back and forth now. But these energies are shifting from the East, coming to the West, almost as if, hey, we want what the West has, and we take, well, whatever we have, whatever, take it for granted, and we're kind of doing the same thing, right? We want these energies to come east. We're dissatisfied with the way things are going, and so I'm seeing a big shift in how people see the world, and what is, I see priorities changing for people, what's important, right? I think a lot of the content, there's going to be, there kind of has been, but there seems to be kind of a critical mass occurring with popular media, with the news, with a lot of things where people are just being more and more dissatisfied, and they're shifting their focus from an outward worldview to an inward worldview, almost from a Western to the Eastern worldview, right? They're shifting their focus, especially in the West. This shift is happening, and I think more and more people are going to be looking in this direction. And when I say in this direction, I mean to say to themselves, and to looking at maybe even to some of the wisdom traditions, the prehistoric cultures and wisdom traditions that have a lot to say, that have a lot to teach us about ourselves, right? Because these high context cultures, such as the Native American cultures, there's a lot of personal embodiment of energy throughout, and there's a lot of connection of your own personal energy through these high context cultures, through like the spirit, your spirit animal, for example, right? You're deeply connected with your spirit animal. There's a lot of these things that on the surface if you look at it from a Western point of view, it might sound romantic and interesting, but it's really doesn't, it doesn't really register, right? But I think more of that understanding is starting to register with more people. And I think that can only be a good thing. I think that can only lead us in a more higher awareness mindset, right? So that is the end of part 6. If you enjoyed this presentation, please subscribe, like the video, and feel free to leave your comments. I really like seeing your comments and interacting with you guys. So please share your perspective, ask questions, and I will see you guys next week for part 7. Okay, thanks.